Kicked out my pregnant cheating girlfriend ex-posting from /r/offmanchist. Here's a little bit about who we are. We're both in our 30s and have just migrated to a new city across the country, since I was offered a much higher paying job in an area with typically lower living expenditures, as well as being a good location to raise a family. We're both married and have one child. She is now 7 months pregnant at the time of writing. Initially, I was surprised because we had always used birth control or I had pulled out, but after some consideration, I was overjoyed. It was the perfect time in our lives for children, and I had just finished the last payments on my apartment, low-interest mortgages, and first-time buyer benefits FTW. In addition to being a strong contender for the job I am currently holding. Anyway, she's been behaving a little unusually distant and guarded recently. At breakfast, she was even more distant and quiet than usual, so I inquired as to what was wrong a number of times, till she yelled that she didn't have to answer me all the time and walked away. Well, whatever, I was running late for work and just went on my way. At around lunchtime, I received a message from a coworker asking if I could leave the lab early because she needed to speak with me about something extremely important and didn't want to wait until I got home after a long day. So I finished up my work, cleared it with my supervisor, and drove home, stopping to pick up some subs for the family on the way. To cut a long story short, she told me that while I was working Hell Week at the lab, she met a guy while out with several of her coworkers on a night out, and that one thing led to another, and they ended up having a relationship. This carried on for a week or two, apparently as a result of my incessant work and inability to spend enough time with her throughout the day. I worked 14-hour days at the time and simply wanted to relax at home. It was then that she realized what was going on. Since he had pretended to be wearing a very thin condom and hadn't realized what he was doing until she felt it. Because I was so irritated when she informed me, I got up and threw her sub in the trash before leaving for a drive to a friend's house to take a break and get some fresh air. When I got home the next morning, I asked my wife if we could make an appointment for a prenatal paternity test, which she first objected to but eventually consented to after some convincing. It was that morning that I made a scheduled appointment for the following week, and I stayed with my buddy until the end of the day. I took the afternoon off work and drove us to the operations center in silence, except for her crying and apologizing. I finished the procedure, dropped her off, and went back to my friend's house until the results were in the mail. We got the results today, and guess what? They were positive. After we arrived at our destination, I told her to get out and start packing, since I wanted. Where did he gone before I returned from work or picked up my belongings from my friends? It made me laugh when she told me that I couldn't just abandon her and become homeless while she was so close to her due date and so far away from home, and that she loved me and wanted me to raise this child with her because it was the only way it would have a decent life. She has an arts degree and was working a minimum wage job prior to the move/pregnancy. I never made it to work. Instead, I drove into a field and contacted my boss, who instructed me to take as much time as I needed and that he would arrange for a PhD student to fill in for me while I was away. I sobbed uncontrollably in the backseat for hours as everything around me fell apart around me. I'd only recently gotten my life in order, and everything was stable and ready for the baby to arrive. Even the design of the baby's room was finished by our team. It wasn't until I switched on my phone again that I saw I had received a slew of missed phone calls and voicemails, some of which had been left by her, others by members of her family, and a couple from a friend pleading with me to come to his house as soon as possible. I dialed my friend's number, gave him the details, and drove over to his house. What has happened so far is that I haven't returned to the house because I just cannot bring myself to do it, knowing that all of my hopes and dreams for it have been dashed. I'm completely at a loss on what to do. Thank you for your understanding in advance. If my meandering wall of text is difficult to follow, I just wanted to get everything out and was typing on my iPad while doing so. A brief summary of recent developments. Please accept my apologies for the delay in answering. Nonetheless, I have been collaborating with a solicitor and her family. When I finally got myself together, I followed her advice and booked a one-way coach ticket back to my hometown. Trains do not go to. On the next morning, I went to the house, her luck, and then left the room. I had a few calls from her relatives, who were concerned about my mental health and other concerns, but I kept my phone turned off since then, and I'm just trying to move on. I may compose a proper article over the weekend and then switch my phone back on. At this point, I'm concentrating on my job in order to catch up on everything I've fallen behind on. Thank you very much for all of your assistance. This is a fantastic community and I had no idea it would develop at the rate that it has. I was pleasantly surprised. Story 2. I was the girl he used to cheat and I feel oddly bad, but also not. So I was with someone who I broke up with over the summer. Because things weren't working out, they went back to a previous ex and stay with her because she said she would let them stay with them for a discount rate. We started talking again and were avid karaoke singers. When we were together, we never called being together a relationship because I don't really like with my companion, and she was still there, just as I had expected. She ran up to me and started sobbing, asking with me not to end our relationship. She then walked away. I didn't change my mind about wanting her to get out of here. So I gave her the piece of paper with the coach ticket and pushed her to gather her stuff so that I could drop her off at the coach station as planned. Eventually, after much more tears, she packed her belongings, which I loaded into the car and drove us to the bus station together. A buddy was with us the whole time as a witness, since you can never be too cautious. When we escorted her out of the vehicle with even more and sat her down in the waiting area, she calmed down a little because there were others around, but my response was, "What am I supposed to do now as an unemployed, homeless single mother?" She asked Jenny, "You're a jerk. You should talk to Zach. It is not his problem." I told her she should try to track down her father as a joke, wish. The way that relationships sounds, I feel like people use relationships to lord over behavior over their partner. Neither here nor there. When we hung out, it was just good, it was perfect, it was great, we understood each other. We talked, we text all day long. People were like, "How can you guys be so close? You just met each other." It's not like it was something that happened to me. It was new, never had that type of relationship before. So fast forward, it's fall now. I randomly see this person out at karaoke, and they were like, "You should sit with me." I'm like, "Don't think that's a good idea. I don't think your girlfriend would like that." He stated, "We're just friends, right? So it's cool." I'm like, "Okay." Well, lo and behold, we get drunk and my friend make sure I get home safely. Then, after being dropped off in the parking lot, he tells me that he loves me, he missed me, he wouldn't stop kissing me, and I'm not gonna lie, I enjoyed it, but I knew morally it was wrong. He told me he couldn't control how he felt, asked me come inside my apartment. I say no, and that he should go home. Next weeks later, we end up doing the same thing again, except I do end up hanging out with him, and we end up sleeping with each other, which has happened twice. He is still with his current girlfriend, and he still tells me that he loves me. I kind of gave him an ultimatum to be friends or break up with ex, and maybe more. He said he would be respectful and control himself, and that he would want to be friends, but being around him, I realize I can't just be friends. The chemistry is too much. It's not good for him, and it's not good for me. He's not good for my mental health. I know that technically I'm not a cheater, and that he is, and that makes him a bad person, but nobody is just a bad person, and nobody's just a good person. Even though I let him go, and I did the right thing, I'm still going to miss him. And I think about calling him, even though I know it's wrong.